Rishi Sunak is said to be woefully unprepared for a snap May election.
Well, Downing Street aides are warning Rishi Sunak to wait until October before sending Britain to the polls so that measures being introduced in tomorrow's budget, such as the now pretty certain 2% cut to national insurance, will start to actually feed into the economy. Tory Minister Greg Hands poured cold water over any sniff of an earlier election on Times Radio Breakfast this morning.
Are you ready for a May election if it comes? Do you think there's any sniff of actually there being a general election in May?
No.
That's very clear.
Same thing. Well, it comes as the Conservatives woke up to their worst polling result in 40 years. They have now sunk to 20%, the depths of which they haven't been able to reach since 1978. Well, former government advisor and favourite of this show, a good Gloucester man, James Price, is still with us in the studio. And joining us down the line is the Sun columnist Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, I mean, you know, I don't think anyone thought there was going to be a spring election. I mean, good luck to the Conservatives if it does come at its usual time of May. But I don't think that they're going to be able to claw much back from just knocking 2 pence off national insurance either.
No, I think that anything like that will be seen as a bribe, and I don't think it will go down all that well with the voters, even those who benefit from it. I think that the issue about a snap election in May is a dead duck, and I said so in my column in The Sun yesterday. It's been ruled out by Downing Street, and the reason is they have a plan, if you can call it a plan, to make sure that the public is aware of the benefits of all of their rigor in the economy over the last few months. So in other words, in the next month or two or during the summer, we will see mortgage rates fall, we will see interest rates fall, and we will see inflation fall. All of those things will be after May, and they need to get them to drip into the public consciousness before they dare to go to the polls.
This is how bad things are for the Tories, Trevor. Under John Major, when they were very unpopular, they plunged to 22%. When just before Blair stormed to Labour's landslide victory in 1997, the Conservatives stood at 23%. Both really, really bad numbers, but not as bad as 20%. Do you think Rishi has any idea of the hole he's dug himself in? And what do you put down as the reasons for this extraordinary record low in popularity and support for the Tories? I mean, I would have talked about the migrant crisis, which Rishi hasn't stopped the boats, the economy, the cost of living, everything. Those 5 pledges he made, pretty much all of them have failed. Those would be my reasons. But overarchingly, I'd say this. We look at Rishi Sunak and we look at his cabinet and we say, this is not a Conservative government.
Well, it certainly isn't the sort of lineup that you would have seen back in 1978 when the polls were down to 22%. And what happened after that, of course, Margaret Thatcher took over and became Prime Minister and won the first of 3 elections. What we're seeing here is a huge amount of panic inside the Conservative Party in the last couple of days. I mean, it's been bubbling away right through the winter, but these polls have really caused a lot of alarm. There will be a large number of people swept away in the coming general election, almost certainly. And many of those are going to be the people tipped as the stars of the future. In other words, the sort of fresh blood, the thoughtful, the intellectually capable, the political operators of the future, and the future cabinet ministers and even prime minister. So they're very worried, and there is now increased talk about whether or not, as a desperate measure, it's too late or not to try and dump Rishi. I don't think they will. I think it is too late, but it shows the measure of despair in the ranks of the Tory party at the moment.
Yeah, it seems to me that all the ills of the country are so palpable to everybody. You cannot get through to your GP surgery. You know, you look at the state of your high street, potholes in the road. Everywhere you look, the country just looks second rate. It looks dreadful. And I think a lot of people out there are probably thinking, well, you know, at least Labour invests in more stuff. They don't do the basic mathematics of I pay for it through my taxes. But they'll say, well, at least Labour are more likely to put more money into the NHS and I can't get a doctor's appointment. It seems to me that the only option left the Conservative Party is to start to get a bit dirty and to not allow someone like Sir Keir Starmer to have such an easy ride. And yet at the same time, instead, it seems to be the Prime Minister's focus is doing a cuddly little photo opportunity in Grazia magazine.
Yes, I think that the Tories are now well into their 15th year, and people are looking back and they're feeling poorer. And the reason they're feeling poorer is because they are poorer. The tax levels are at a 70-year high. And, you know, as you say, the whole of the country looks shabby. A post-COVID situation which has left street-level shopping centres devoid of stores, all closed up. That's not entirely the fault of the Conservative government, but it is seen as the culmination of those 14 years that we've had of Tory rule. And I think that many people, and I think rightly, blame the fact that uncontrolled mass immigration has impinged on our public services. We have huge pressures on housing, health, social welfare, and almost every other aspect of our life in Britain today. And this has happened under the Conservatives, and they're not going to be forgiven lightly for that.
Indeed. And what I've always said about Rishi, Trevor, is that, you know, I think he's a decent guy. He's a very intelligent guy. But he always seemed to think that he could just look at us and go, hi, guys, we're going to put everything right. You know, he's a sort of rah, rah, rah guy with no substance. And I think he's a very poor politician, intelligent man, poor politician. What on earth possessed him to think that traditional Tory voters are going to go, great, you've got a Remainer wet as your Chancellor. You've brought Jeremy Hunt back from the dead where he should have remained. And now, goody gumdrops, you've brought back Remainer wet David Cameron. We have the migration crisis goes from bad to worse. I think it's 5 people have died since last week trying to get across the channel. We learnt this morning 300 came on Sunday, 150 on Saturday. He's just not getting to grips with it. He made that excellent speech on Friday about extremism. Why did he have to make it? Because it's his fault, because he allowed extremism to grow and grow. He's allowed wokery to consume this nation. He has taken his hands off the wheel and left the Tories with a mess. They are, frankly, thanks to Rishi Sunak and his Remainer mates, unelectable.
I think you hit the nail on the head on one particular point there, if I may say so, Kevin, and that is the reappointment to top-level politics of David Cameron, who is responsible for a large number of the problems that Rishi Sunak faces and indeed the British public face today. I mean, he completely screwed up the Brexit situation. He failed to deliver the promises that he made on curbing immigration and freedom of movement. And there are multiple other things that I think the Cameron regime was guilty of and blamed for. But I do agree that Rishi, for all the fact that I think he's a decent and honourable man, lacks the killer instinct. I don't think that he realises that he needs to show that he's the leader. He has to prove by introducing the sort of policies that resonate with the people who want to vote Tory, but at the moment simply cannot and will not.
Is this a case of being lily-livered, or is it just actually impossible that the minute you get into number 10 and your hands are on the levers, the things that you really want to do, you can't do? Something else I want to bring to your attention, I spotted it on Twitter. An MP has tweeted how, following an announcement that the Department of Work and Pensions are no longer going to give any sort of breakdown on welfare payments by nationality, turns out HMRC is not going to do that when it comes to tax either. So one thing we're never going to know, as you were saying earlier, people have a sense that there's massive with migration is really affecting not just our social fabric, but impacting the economy negatively. We're not actually going to know now whether they're contributing to the economy or taking away from the economy. It's just a big cover-up.
No, you're right, Alex. I think that what the government is finding, or has found for the last several years, is that they're not in control. The public sector is, the civil services. They are the ones who arbitrate whether a policy can be implemented or not, and when it's a Tory policy, it's not implemented. But the fact is, still, it remains that the Tories have been in office for 14 years. And the development of this sort of woke agenda, which began under Gordon Brown when he planted his own appointees into some of the most important roles in quangos and charities and quasi-governments, that quasi-autonomous regimes which have an important role in our daily lives. All of that was done at the time David Cameron took office in 2010. And he has done absolutely nothing, despite repeated promises, to clean out those quangos, to deal with the charities who are immensely powerful as sort of semi-political organizations with huge muscle and political appeal. And he's known all this. He knew all this at the beginning. And basically, he's the same David Cameron in his role as Foreign Secretary, stirring up the sort of problems that he helped create when he was Prime Minister.
Here's a vote winner for Rishi, if he's listening, which he probably isn't. Turn the boats back. It's not the worst thing in the world to take a dinghy, hook it up to a stable craft and take it back to France. For Rishi, the only consideration is this. That won't make us look good on the international stage. Does he think there are votes in how we look on the international stage? Do you think the people of Hartlepool go, well, I wish they'd tow the boats back to France, but we can't look bad on the international stage. We must remain a member of these globalist groups like the ECHR. It is a lack of understanding on his part that robust moves like that would have done the Tories a whole world of good, and yet he's never had the guts to do it.
There is the point, Kevin. I agree absolutely with that. I think that firm action on immigration could have curbed at least the illegal side of it very quickly. And I think that it would have discouraged an awful lot of those people who have travelled across the Channel, some of them not surviving the journey, if he'd taken the bull by the horns. He would also have split the Tory party, of course, because it's full of people who, like Boris Johnson, and not necessarily just like Boris Johnson, but many others who simply think that immigration isn't a bad thing at all. And as a result, you've got major numbers, I mean, huge numbers of people coming in legally with nowhere to house them, no way of treating them on the health service, and no way of accommodating them. So, yes, I think that he is terrified, and so are many members of the cabinet, of taking on the European Union as we thought we were going to do after Brexit.
Trevor, thank you ever so much. It's always
Thanks,
wonderful
Trevor.
having you join us.